Hello. Hi, everyone. Well, welcome to room 2016, which is where my talk actually is, not room 2024, which is where I thought my talk was, and could have caused things to end very, very badly had a nice tall gentleman not set me straight. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. Let's do this thing. But ceremonial housekeeping before we begin. Please turn your phones to silent or face embarrassment when they play a tune that you're not expecting. And I think we're good. Has everybody got seats? It looks like we're maybe perfectly balanced in terms of habitation. It's pretty cool. Okay, so welcome to Dots That Go for Walks. My name is Margaret Robertson. I'm a game director at a company called Dots. See if you can keep up with me here, but we've made 3 games, Dots, 2 Dots, and then the groundbreaking Dots & Co. And so I'm currently looking after 2 Dots, and last year, so 2 Dots is our biggest game, and I'm looking after that at the moment, and last year I launched Dots & Co, which is our newest game, and that is what I do all day, every day, is I look at those screens and I think about how to make them different or better. Dots are a big part of my life and my brain, and that's why I love this quote so much, which is where the title of the talk comes from. A line is a dot that went for a walk. Paul Klee, who you may know, makes beautiful paintings like this. I love the quote because it encapsulates a thing that I've found in the last couple of years of working on these games, which is that even if you start with this incredibly simplistic object, hardly get more primal in terms of a shape than a circle, the minute you start pushing at the question of what it can do and where it can take you, it can grow into far more exciting and interesting objects than you ever dreamed possible. But I also love this is unbelievably exciting for me that quote isn't just a cute line, it's a line from Paul Klee, who I admire so enormously. I'm not enough of an art historian to give you a kind of full breakdown of where his work fits into various 20th century trends of abstraction and minimalism. But I am enough of a fan of art that fits those descriptors to know that a lot of what is precious to me about that art, the way that it can accomplish so much with such a restrained toolkit, such a limited use of shape, abandonment of representative, figurative elements, this really meticulous and dynamic use of color. Those are things, although it's not a set of kind of resources that we necessarily look at very much in the game sphere. It's perhaps spend as much time in modern art galleries as we should, but I know that whenever I kind of go and spend some time in those environments, I come back with a whole bunch of ideas of things that I would like to see kind of brought to life in the games that I'm making. Because I think that's an important note to hit before we kind of get into the guts of what does it take to do minimalist design well in a game context, and particularly in a commercial game context, which is to make sure that you're really clear about what you're trying to accomplish and why it's worth accomplishing. So I wouldn't want anyone to come away with with the thought that I'm suggesting any kind of hierarchy here. I get excited about very, very minimalist design approaches. I think there's a lot of admirable disciplines they require of you in terms of how you work and how you design, but I'm also an enormous fan of stupid, massive maximalist design. I had a bit that I cut because we haven't got time about how good the UI design in Ascension Chronicle of the Godslayer is. I don't know if we have any Ascension fans in, but it's an absolute, I was trying to think of the least minimal UI I could think of in games, and that's a strong candidate. And it's absolutely masterful. So if you can face the learning curve, I'd quietly start downloading that now because it'll take most of the session. So these are the things that I find so resonant in work by Paul Klee or Rich Serra or Sol LeWitt or whoever else we might be looking at as a kind of art inspiration for this kind of design. And these feel like the kind of bones, the things that I'm really trying to feel out in whatever it is I'm making, that I want my games to have these hallmarks, to have this feeling that they've been made with restraint, with self-discipline, that whatever elements I put in front of you have this kind of total clarity and crispness, so that you feel their edges really cleanly. I fundamentally like working in an abstract rather than a figurative or narrative environment. And all of that needs to be delivered with a very high degree of care, or you just end up with something that feels inert and cheap and flat. So, I spent a bunch of time looking at our own games, looking at other games that I admire, that I think do this well, and tried to put together a little kind of shopping list of advice that I found useful. So I thought I should start by trying to live up to this list, right? Okay, this is an all nice, fine and dandy list. But can I show you something that really delivers those hallmarks? Can I find a design approach where I just, with a few strokes, with just the lightest of touch, using all of this restraint and reaching for all of this clarity, I can add an element visually to the game that gives me this impact. So I gave it a go. I put something together just before this talk. So you'll have to tell me how I did. This is what I came up with. It's the word boat. It's funny, I'm not quite getting the applause that I was hoping. But you should be applauding. Look at this thing. Look at that thing. It's a few beautiful lines. It's some perfect curves, the verticals. It looks great. It's a really beautiful pattern. If you didn't know what that was, and I duplicated it on a beautiful piece of fabric and made a dress out of it, you would think it was the best thing you'd ever seen. It's a complete abstraction, and yet entirely represents the entire concept and visualization of boat. It is boat, but it is not boat. It is the map, not the landscape. It's extraordinary. The more I look at it, the happier I get. Because type does this really well. Type is a very, very restrained mode of visual communication. It has absolute clarity. It delivers that abstraction, and it delivers that precision. A boat is a boat is a boat. And because I know that my stupid boat slide wasn't going to impress you enough, it's all right, I had something up my sleeve. Have you been seeing this guy's work on Twitter? This popped up last week, and I fell in love with it so powerfully. He's a designer who makes these amazing illustrations out of the Arabic script for the word for the thing. So if you look in the bottom right of that panel, there's the Arabic script for whale, and then he draws out of that these gorgeous illustrations. There's a whole collection of them. There's foxes and monkeys and castles and crowns, and it's the best. And it just was a really useful reminder to me of just how much a visual design element type is. And it wasn't surprising that it was in my mind, because it turns out that other designers of minimalist games also seem to think that type is a good place to start when you're trying to do this job well. So this is the very initial onboarding tutorial screen from 3 different games. In the middle is 2 dots, which I currently work on, but I didn't design this screen. On the left is Sputnik Eyes, which is a super cute little spatial puzzler that's hard to explain, but you should try. And on the right is Noodles. That's Noodles, because it has an exclamation mark, which is a pipe, a pipe 'em up. I don't know what the genre is for those. Also great, super satisfying. And we all clearly kind of arrived at the same conclusion here, which is that we wanted to use type to make, to set the tone of voice of the game and define our initial interactions with the player. And that's interesting to me because there's two super good reasons not to rely heavily on typography in games. One is that games aren't always the best at type. I don't mean to be mean, but I was trying to think about games where I felt strongly about the typography in them, and it made me think of Desktop Dungeons. And Desktop Dungeons is an absolute masterpiece. I've put hours and hours and hours and hours and hours into it. But the type in this game is so bad. It's really, really bad. There's so many. Just keep looking at it and seeing more things you don't like about how the things that don't line up and things that aren't. They have to have black outlines because they don't. So it's just not. It's not good because nobody cared. It's because it's hard, because you're asking that kind of content to do a whole bunch of different things at once, and you've got a real chance of falling short somewhere along the way. And here's the other reason that it's a scary, weird thing to put your faith in. It's like the second thing you learn in this job or whatever species of this job that you have, right? People don't read. Nobody reads. And I obeyed that rule for a really long time. But I've now spent enough time in in-house user tests, watching people play, talking to them after they play, looking at screens like the ones we've just looked at, that I think I've invented a new variation of the rule, maybe rule 2.5, which is this. Writing is probably at the bottom of most players' visual priority list. If you give them anything else juicier to look at, they're going to look at that. So the reason that these three screens have all ended up looking so similar is that if you're going to get this to work, it has to be pretty much the only game in town. You have to make the text this big, pleasing, eye-catching attention grabber that's going to pull people's eye in and their attention in, and then hopefully they will tap the thing with the thing, which is really all you're ever trying to tell anyone to do. Please tap the thing with the thing. And that, of all the things I just said, is why it felt like a really good starting point for things to talk about today. Because type is powerful. I love how it looks. I want to use it. If I'm going to use it well, it needs to own the screen. If it's going to own the screen, I need to make space. And making space is probably your single biggest job if you're trying to do good minimalist user experience design in games. You're taking these very, hopefully, beautiful, simple, refined elements. You need to give them room to breathe. Games can be such cluttered, busy, noisy places. You need to find a way to just push all of that to one side, find that space and that emptiness, the calm and the clarity that your design is going to be able to sit inside. So when I'm trying to get myself in the right frame of mind to do that job, I look for inspiration to someone whose work I'm just a huge admirer of. I don't think it'll surprise you to know that I'm thinking of Arnold Schwarzenegger in Predator. There is a man who knows how to get things done. He's got some good advice for us. Stay with me on this one, because it's gonna work out. So, you're in that situation where you are simultaneously trying to defeat a kind of cyborg alien bounty hunter in the jungle and overhaul the UI of your minimalist puzzle game. The first verb that you might need to think about is hiding. Crucial strategy that I learned from Predator. It's a really easy tool to make space. There's a bunch of stuff that is on your screen. It all needs to be on your screen because it's all important. Maybe it doesn't all need to be on your screen all the time because maybe it isn't important at different moments. So this is the beautiful mini Metro. I kind of think, right, everyone in this room must be playing mini Metro, otherwise you're in the wrong room. Who's a mini Metro person? Guys, come on. Super good. It's maybe extra super good if you lived in London for a long time, but it's super good. So this is a very, very simple real-time puzzle game where you're trying to build and service a continually growing network of subway stations. So you have some limited resources in terms of carriages and lines and trains, bridges, but you have an ever-growing pile of passengers and an ever-growing number of stations, and you need to keep trying to find the best fit solution. And then the game does gorgeous things about drawing and routing the train lines that you're putting in place as if it were as a real beautiful map. And to help you do that well, you can speed up and slow down time, as is often the case in games of this sort, but they just quietly hide that UI in the top right. So if you tap on the clock, those controls drop down, and then they go away again, with a really lovely treatment on the clock, where the clock is great. It's a button that's also a status readout of whether it's day or night, and it's also your time readout in terms of how fast time is passing, and it also shows you whether or not time is paused. And it does all of that in a lovely little circle that is also a cute joke about the famous Swiss railway clock design that rail design people love to make jokes about. So it's super simple, but this game would feel, if it loops around again, this game would feel so different if that whole right-hand wall was just blocked off all the time with all of those icons. It needs that space to give you that curve in the top corner so much. This game has a bunch of really nice tricks up its sleeve. I haven't got time to talk about them all today, but the way it handles what happens to you when you lose, which is a thing you'll find out fairly quickly when you try it for the first time, this is really nicely handled. So, Arnie tip number 1, hide. It's a good way of making space. Arnie tip number 2, merge, by which I mean you'll remember that the absolute crucial maneuver in Predator was that he discovered if he glooped himself all the way into the mud, then the Predator couldn't see him. Which was at the forefront of my mind when we were trying to figure out how to do hard currency purchase design for Dots & Co. So Dots & Co came out in the middle of last year. It was the first hard currency game that this studio had done. And so we spent a bunch of time trying to figure out how to do it well. Oh, I need to go quite fast now. And to begin with, we were really flailing, I think. A bunch of talented, smart people worked really hard on these screens, but I don't think they would mind me saying that they are suboptimal in a lot of their designs. The thing on the far left is just so inert and sad and plain. We tried to liven it up a bit with better illustrations in the middle, but now that whole thing is just super busy. The flashes don't work as flashes. It's not clear what isn't a button. Everything about it's bad. So we threw it all out and started again, which is what you have on the far right, and things are getting better, but there's still a bunch of dislocation between what is and isn't interactive, and it's visually overwhelming. There's too many colors, everything's tricksy. And the thing that was holding us back was we hadn't listened to Arnie. Merging saved us. So this is pretty much the same content, but now all of the visual elements are just merged with the actual button element. So each of those 2 pink panels is a giant button. And once we saved ourselves just the lines, the physical lines of trying to delineate all of these different things of like, here's an illustration, and here's a button, and here's an informational panel that's going to sit next to the button, was killing us. And you squidge it all into one thing. And it doesn't always feel like a very minimalist instinct, because piling things on top of each other doesn't seem like a minimal idea. But if they're the right things, you can kind of collapse space and they all land neatly on top of each other, and then you can give yourself far more space to actually enjoy those illustrations, and then the clarity to really cut down on that color load, which is much, much better. Touchtone does this really nicely as well. I don't know, I bet fewer people have played Touchtone. Super nice. It's like a laser angler reflector game. Also don't know the genre for that one. With a super weird, sly story that is going to feel horribly resonant now in a way that it didn't before about the surveillance state. But they do the super simple thing that that color illustration, that thing that's giving you a sense of being in the city, is the button. So that's the play button. And each time you go to a new place, that's the vision that you have of the new thing. And it's smart. It's so simple. It would have taken me forever to see it. I would have ruined that screen trying to figure out how to embed the play button around or on top of the bit of illustration that I was trying to add to kind of be evocative of how the thing was going to work. Hide, merge. I'm not doing a get to the chopper Arnie impression because it's not my strong suit. But evacuation, key part of his strategy. Take the things you don't need that aren't mission critical, get them out of the way. Here's another Dots & Co. example. This is like we were like midway on the branding work that we did on Dots & Co. We'd been a little bit lost, and we were so pleased to get here, to this really strong, simple shape. There's so much smart thinking in this. We've got the solid O's in Dots & Co., or a callback to the 2 dots logo, so we had that nice brand cohesion that went through. The shape of the whole thing reinforces the shape of the virtual currency object that we have, which is a token. The compass motif in the top was then an element that we were going to be able to repeat in a whole bunch of like narrative settings elsewhere in the game, that we were kind of building out this little adventure club idea around it. The needle in the middle of the compass is the shape of the special triangular dot that is invented in Dots & Co. It's genius. It's so much smart thinking has gone into that. So we killed it because it was so busy being clever, it wasn't any good. Because it was just too much. It was far, far, far too much. So despite the fact that we had a bunch of good strategic thought behind it, it just wasn't adding up to anything that really captured the spirit of what we were trying to do. So what you're seeing on the right is basically the current login screen. The map behind it changes depending on where you are in the world, so that's constantly evolving. But that and the Facebook button, if you're not logged in, is the only screen furniture that we have, and we ended up going with this incredibly typographic approach for the logo because it was just the most bang for buck. It was the biggest impact that we could have with the least detail that got in the way of us doing anything else. So we threw that stuff out. Sometimes the stuff we threw out that we didn't even realize that we threw out. So this is also a Dots & Co. screenshot. Every now and again our games get cloned, and so you get strange situations where somebody will put a game in the App Store with just like screenshots stolen from your App Store. But then in a weird effort to try and make it, I don't know why, but in a weird effort they sometimes like change the screenshots a bit to try and disguise the fact that they've stolen them. So we found this the other day, and initially all we could notice was that basically what they'd done was it looked like they'd taken one of the characters from Mujo and stuck it on top of our companion. Now Mujo, side note, is an iOS game made by these guys, Oink Games. I think their digital work is really good. I think their paper and tabletop work is spectacular. They make basically, I think, the coolest looking tabletop and board games anywhere in the world right now. I love their stuff so much, you should go and follow them on Twitter. So yeah, it was weird. It was like somebody just pulled out a bit of their art and stuck it on top of ours. And that distracted us for a bit. And it distracted us for so long that we didn't notice this. That the other thing they'd done was they'd put eyes on the turtles. And that was really interesting because we'd never thought about putting eyes on the turtles. And now we realize that it was right, because it's weird and terrible and they don't need eyes. And it's a kind of useful question as to whether or not, when you're talking about gave me a different perspective on the concept of feature culling when we started to start asking whether or not things needed eyes or noses. This is another good example of that. This is Reigns, which again you should play if you haven't. It's a super cute, like, lightweight choice-based RPG. You're the king of a country and advisors come to you over and over and over with a simple question, and you make a binary choice, left or right, and then your country prospers or doesn't accordingly. This is the Archbishop of Canterbury, not Canterbury. Have to say that carefully. He doesn't have a nose or a mouth, poor Archbishop. And that made me wonder, maybe he doesn't need eyes. If turtles don't need eyes, why do archbishops need eyes? And I think that's a really interesting thing, which is he does need eyes. Because he still reads as a human character right now. He still probably even reads as an archbishop. But without the eyes, you lose that sense of connection, and you lose that sense of his kind of snarky, untrustworthy frame of mind. And so that, as you're evacuating all of the stuff out of your game that you think you don't need, that's definitely a way to be on, the need is to watch out for, have you gone too far? The turtles don't need eyes, because their eyes aren't helping, but they do need to be turtles, because them being turtles tells you a huge amount about what to expect out of them as game objects. They move on their own. They go into their shells. When you hit them, they come back out of their shells after you hit them. A turtle is a hell of a way to communicate what would otherwise be the world's biggest tooltip to take you through all of that. So they don't need eyes, but they do need to be turtles. He does need eyes, but he doesn't need a nose. Any questions? Archbishop's nose? Okay, right. Also, if you're obeying your Arnie rules, look at the nice merge they've done in the top of the UI. So the four icons are kind of the four different estates. The church, the army, the coffers. Each time you make a choice, they're impacted. And the degree to which they're impacted is shown by the size of the change, and the nature of the change is shown by the color of the change. So green means better and red means worse. And then the icons represent the things themselves. And it's just super great. They could have garbaged that up with a ton of like bars and text and a whole bunch of things, but they found a really, really simple way to do it. Arnie, hide, merge, evacuate. You'll recall, kill. Well, I think Dots & Co example, just because I know a lot about it. This was the original character select screen. In Dots & Co, you have a little companion who goes with you into the game and helps you out each level. The original concept was that you would have a rookie and an expert companion available each level. The rookie was free, the expert cost hard currency, but was more powerful. And we put a ton of work into finding the right way to make this choice clean. And we stuck button upon button upon button and tried swiping paradigm upon swiping paradigm. And we got into a situation where we could, you were chasing your tail. You would fix this problem and then cause a new problem, and round and round and round you would go. And where we ended up was here. And this should animate, I think. So it's the same mono button solution. So again, rather than having to navigate button plus illustrative element plus informational element, everything's muddled together. But the other thing you'll notice is we basically killed the feature. This is a different take on the same feature. So there's still an option to make a hard currency purchase to up your chances of beating the level, but we lost the idea that there would be two separate characters that you were choosing between, because it was just too much of an information burden at a moment in the game where you want things to be smooth and fast and about anticipation. Okay, so we killed we didn't kill the penguin, but sort of. Sorry, Anita. She's wearing a scarf. Okay, I'm definitely over time, so these are going to go crazy fast. Arnie wouldn't be Arnie without some kind of secret weapon. This is our secret weapon. I can't recommend this strongly enough. Everything we make is 100% colorblind playable. And it's an enormous amount of work, and it's prodigiously worthwhile. So this is a pretty complex Dots & Co screen. We've got a bunch of stuff going on. We've got dots that explode into squares, we've got dots that auto-connect to other dots, we've got dots that auto-connect to other dots that are inside, dots that only open when you match next to them, and there's balloons that are going up to the top of the screen, there's panels that change the color of dots that fall into them. It's all moderately overwhelming from a design perspective if you're just playing, but if you turn colorblind on, now all of that has to function successfully with the shape system that we have on top of that. And every single mechanic that we put in the game, even if it seems like we don't know how to do it, we won't put in unless we can make colorblind work. And we do that because it's nice. You wouldn't believe how many letters we get from people. You wouldn't believe how many people don't think they're colorblind, but still find it incredibly useful to have that kind of facility within a game. Super, super worthwhile. It's an incredibly good discipline for us as designers. It just forces you to be incredibly restrained and precise in how you work. And because you figured out all of your colorblind design at a formal level, it gives you the freedom to do whatever the hell you want with color anywhere else. And that maybe is the thing that is the most vital tool in our toolbox for doing good minimal design, which is that we invest a wildly high proportion of our energy into color. So we redo the palette of the game this is 2Dots so far. Dots & Co also does this. It's a huge amount of work to settle on those palettes and then make sure everything works against everything else. It's unbelievably worthwhile because it is a way of giving the game a sense of richness and luxury without adding detail or texture or complex illustration. And so that kind of double whammy of using colorblind as an opportunity to make sure that our designs are really, really, really restrained and then being to be able to do things with color was fantastic. I got one thing that's cooler than rainbow ink. Invisible ink. These are the design elements that we use to make our minimal design work that don't show up on screen. This is the biggest one, music and sound. If you're trying to do minimal design and you're not including these as a cornerstone of how your design is going to work, you're making life way harder for yourself than it needs to be. We're unbelievably reliant on how smart our sound team are for supporting the work that we try and do in terms of the aesthetic that we're trying to hit. And then that also goes for things like vibration. Did that buzz? Yeah, one of the best bits of visual design we have in the game is that when you make a square, it buzzes. And because it buzzes, we don't have to do anything else. We actually do some other things, but we have to do so much less because we have that vibration in there. So when you're like hitting a ceiling visually, you're like, there's more I need to communicate, but my screen's getting too busy, this thing's starting to feel noisy and not minimal enough. Remember that you have other tools at your disposal that aren't visual. Because I think that's the thing that I've been most conscious of coming to work at this company. We're 50 people now, and if everyone doesn't buy into the virtue of a minimal aesthetic, you're going to have a really hard time holding onto it, especially in a commercial setting. Minimalist is fragile. You can ruin it real quick just by sticking an extra button in there, or a new texture, or a dumb Keynote animation transition that I should not use, but I can't resist. You need everybody to be invested in keeping things clear and keeping things clean, in figuring out how their discipline, whether they're game designers or product managers or musicians or whatever else they do, can like hold the line and let the work stay clean and beautiful as you want it to be.